Hi, I'm Jake, and this is Loot. Obviously, you probably know that already. Um, I usually make role-playing supplements and Pathfinder 2 videos. God. But today I have Fil Kearney, and we're going to be talking about um. Okay, sorry, I'll back up a second. Fil Kearney has a lot of creativity about how to take pieces from different games and make his own creation out of it or put them in different game systems. He's also created his own products for 5e mostly, and he's also a really prolific artist. He makes pretty art things. And so you can check his channel, it'll be in the description. But today we're going to be talking about making difficult moral choices, moral dilemmas in role playing games, and specifically killing baby Hitler. Or I guess you could think of it as time jumping to kill baby Thanos. Like, what are the ramifications thereof? And in a role playing game, how would you do so as the GM and a player? How do you make those decisions? And what are the repercussions thereof? And we might tangent a lot. So this is probably going to be heavily edited because we talk a lot.
Yeah, good times, good fun. Tangents abound.
Will you please tell me like what kind of stuff you do that I might have seen or just what you like to do?
Sure, yeah. Hey, my name is Fil Kearney. I'm at Fil Kearney. You can see it on here, Filkearney. Just put that in and you'll find all my stuff. I stream a lot of artwork. I build, okay, so I build role-playing games, I illustrate them, and then I publish them online. So I come up with an idea for something. I've been playing with 5e a lot because Wizards of the Coast owns both Magic the Gathering and D&D. So I create Magic the Gathering color mana systems to be used in 5e so your characters can use color magic. Instead of the 8 schools of magic and spell slots, you can have a color mana system instead. That allows you to do a lot of character mechanics and personality integration. So you can have like a character that does what they feel or how they think. You can express it through the way that your character uses their mana in a
Like
five.
the Magic the Gathering novels did that.
Yeah. Just build. I can build any of those. I can build any of the Planewalkers easily with the mechanics that we already have published on Demon's Guild. It's just color mana system or color magic. You can find me easily there. I create. I take different systems and I see what do they offer that could be integrated into another game, like ability checks or like scaling and stuff like that. I take different mechanical games, I build them into kits that can be used for the game. I then illustrate it. I stream all that online. I stream book creation online, editing, page layouts, all the artwork, and then I brainstorm stuff and build adventures and stuff online. And then I publish that stuff wherever. I'm on Discord, Patreon, obviously on YouTube a lot. Catch me anywhere. Shoot me a line, and say hey. So
Something that I want to point out for our Starfighter 2 fans is that Phil, not I guess not recently anymore, a few months ago, made a Spelljammer video about how you do 3D combat in space, and all of that shit is useful for Starfinder 2 now as well for you Pathfinder 2 people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's actually based on Essence 20 that Renegade Games builds. Renegade subcontracts all of the Hasbro IPs, My Little Pony, Power Rangers, Transformers, G.I. Joe. They have a E20 Essence 20 system, and their system is built around proficiency bonuses gained through loot that you equip your characters with during a mission. So you're kitting out XCOM style different kits, except for My Little Pony, it's different. But like all those other IPs, they totally work on like clipping toys onto your characters. So that's how they built the game. And
Ah,
I extracted those mechanics and I built it into a scaling ship combat system. So anything from 5 feet to 500 feet in size works in the same mechanics. And once you get beyond 500 feet, you start to distort into kaiju mechanics. So I'm building a supplement on like how to build like 200-foot Jaegers fighting 500-foot kaiju. And that video you were talking about was an example of I think it was a 1,500-foot kaiju that was attacking an asteroid called Rocket Brawl, and you had to
yeah.
find a fleet to attack it and how to fight it away. So it broke down how the math worked on building it, the scaling and the movement that worked into it, and where its soft spots were, so your characters can become relevant at the 5-foot scale. So you want to zoom in from the 500-foot to the 50, closing down to 5 feet when your characters jump off and start stabbing it in the eye with a sword. Like that's that's how you do kaijus, right? You find his weak spot and then you
Right.
just have it until they die. So
Or you
that's
like implant bombs.
yeah. Depending on the scale. So and you can scale up to 100 million miles down to 5 feet. It's a smooth, it's a smooth scaling system that can be used in any game. It's just how does your math work? And everything that's D20 basically works the same. So, but yeah, I think Pathfinder would have a joy messing around with that.
Oh yeah, and Starfinder 2 books just came out, the playtest versions, and there is no ship-to-ship combat, and there is no detail on how to fight a ship. So
Right.
there's a bunch of shit about classes and monsters, and there's 2 adventures already, but we
Sure.
need that portion that you're really good at.
Yeah. Oh God, it's so fun to be able to take like a 5 foot scale and like scale it to the 50 foot scale. So you got like a 200 foot robot in a 4x4 space. It's just the math is easy once you figure out how the curve works. But that's kind of what I do. I take things and I rescale them and I reconvert them into other formats. So
And you are also a fan of sci-fi and fantasy, and that's primarily why we're here. He has a lot of experience reading a lot of fiction, and he has a very creative brain, and so that's why we're collaborating on how to do different things in role-playing games. I'm hoping this actually becomes a series, maybe like difficult problems or moral dilemmas or something like that.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So we're talking about moral dilemmas, right? Are we specifically working with like time loops and time travel and trying to take care of a threat before it becomes a threat, or what's the scope of
Yeah.
the conversation?
Yeah, definitely. Like you already know the repercussions that this person will have, whether it's from psychism or time travel, and then what you decide to do about them. And I also want to talk about, if we have time, moral repercussions for that character, what their deity might think, or what the deity of that killed person might think,
Yeah.
or aspects of time or psychism or prophecy, how they would interact with what you choose to do. Because I'm going to be brief in this because we have limited time, but on my channel, there's a live stream that started off with Outlaws of Alkenstar and is now in ancient Osirian, 5,000 years in the past. So it's basically ancient Egypt, and the group located the guy who eventually kills tens of thousands of people in a war against 2 mages. He's one of the 2 big, like lich level, powerful archmages that kills tens of thousands of people and leaves an entire region as a desolate wasteland and magically dead. And so they're contemplating killing this guy or maybe raising him, teaching him to do differently. So this definitely pertains to what I'm doing right now. So I might throw in things like that. Well, what if this happened? What if this is a political influence?
Yeah. Right on. I guess if I were to flail into this, I would say I think the narrative of I mean, you're already running a campaign, but if we're looking at this just as a broad as just broad strokes that could then be refined down to somebody's specific campaign. I think where it really starts is what is the narrative depth that you have in your game. An analogy would be: do you use a lot of grid combat so that your team is constantly looking at what information has been provided to them, or is it softer theater of the mind where they have the narrative authority to be able to introduce ideas into it, because that could really impact how the ramifications and the fallout of them taking this historical action is. And that then like if they're really hard math about it, then that might lead you towards, well, you already know what is. So instead of having to rebuild this heavy depth of what is, the ramifications of your action is it's a preset thing. It's going to play out exactly the same way as it was, because your team, their personality type at the table is, we want specific details. So as a DM, you're going to have to come up with the same depth of details of what you've already established in the game. Otherwise, that team is probably going to feel a disconnect because it's not
Yeah.
the way the campaign feels to them
Right.
versus a looser authority where they can like, hey, is there a table in the room? Or if there's like a crate, I'm totally going to throw it at that ogre. It's like, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
that's awesome, do that. And that like opens up the door for them to have more and more authority of, you want to have this thing fall out. What do you imagine the repercussions of this would be? And then you can start using what their expectations are versus what you know is actually going to work in the campaign. That's like a really basic building block. Like one of the ways that I
But
modified
it
the
matters.
yeah, it really does. One of the ways that I modified the wish spell in my books is that you can have a conversation with the DM about how you want reality to change. This is like a 20th level thing. You can't do this with Wish until you hit 20th level. You can barter up X amount of your spells. Like I have like 45 spells I can cast per day. And for me to make sure that my brother comes back from the dead, I'm going to give it all up. And so,
Oh,
so you and the DM can have a conversation about how important is this thing executing for you, and then you create a price cost to it. So, in that same sort of thought process, if you have a softer narrative system, it's like, what do you want to see have happen? Then it becomes like, what's the difficulty check that I can imagine of that being executed, and how can we break that down into a number of different skill tests or like small encounters cascading through time?
wow. This is like
Like
very static or logic minded as opposed to dynamism or ecstatic.
yeah. I mean, you could structure it that way. Like if you have that party that wants the hard grit, you can break it down to you did this thing in the past, and now when you move back forward in time, you can't just take one step. You now have to go through every bullet point that is being impacted by your decision, and you're going to have a piece of how that plays out because you're now bound to this because you fucked with it. So it's now your responsibility to make it play out the way that you want to. And if you screw up, it's going to get worse and worse and worse for you. The difficulty is going to keep climbing to get to where you want it to be. And if ever you start falling, it's going to get uglier and more dystopian or exactly what you don't want to have happen.
I like this. You can even do this if it's not like a very rigid logic structured system, or even if you don't have those players that are of that mind, by doing something similar, like doing something similar to, okay, so you took this action. Now you look into the scrying pool. This is a special one from the gods or whatever, and you
Yeah.
can see the future as things play out. You can try to interact with it and force changes here and here and here, and see what they can do at that point.
That was a Rick and Morty episode. Do you watch Rick and Morty?
No.
Oh my God! There's these crystals. At one point, in Rick and Morty, it's like Doc and Marty from Back to the Future, but they go through different dimensions instead of time because time travel is boring. So they go to different dimensions, and they keep looting and camping all these different wonderful resources. And at one point, they find these crystals that if you they show you your future. And Morty is in love with this girl in high school, and his goal is for her to be with him his whole life. So he holds this crystal and it gives him a glimpse of her, and he takes a step and she disappears. And he steps back and she comes back into focus, and then he goes the other direction and she stays in front of him. So over the course of the adventure, he basically tapes it to his forehead, so it's constantly there. And the only decisions that he makes are whatever keeps Jessica in view. So at some point, he's like destroying armies, he's lobbing bombs, he's not even looking. It's just happening. He's gotten so good that he's just gesturing around and just happening around him. It's off the fucking hook. It's like the fourth season, I think that happens. It's insane. Oh my God, that's great.
Cool.
But it's insane. Like that looking pool that you're talking about is like what do you want to have happen versus what are you afraid of happening, and what is that going to force you to do?
I didn't think of doing it that way, because like if you do that way with the crystals and you give one to each party member, they all have different goals and they have to decide how to interact and work together on these goals. Okay, I'm willing to sacrifice a year of Jessica if you give me 10 years of cats.
Yeah, there you go. Right on. And it could get to a point where like in chess, they position themselves in a corner where they're going to have to give up something horrible to stay in the game.
Yeah.
And then they end up becoming just as bad as the guy that they killed, but in a completely different way. Or if you want to be ironic, the exact same way. You end up killing the same amount of people, but you don't even know you're doing it.
Or, it doesn't count because they were never alive to begin with.
Yeah, there you go. Or they get what they want out of it, but nothing really changed except they get what they want out of it. So they're okay with it. And now they realize, well, that's what that guy was doing. So, but now they feel morally just in it. So
wow.
What about Hitler? How just did he feel when he was doing what he was doing? If you end up slaughtering millions of people for you to have the nation that you always wanted, it's like,
I think I may have mentioned this to you last time we talked, because we tend to veer off in different directions, but I read a book once. It was a vampire novel. Don't judge me. That a like vampire knew the future of what Hitler would become, and because this vampire was given a higher purpose from God, I know it's complicated.
That's great.
They were ordered to protect this child from this poisonous snake in the garden, and they didn't know who he was at first. And then they save the kid. The snake is dead, and then they find out his name, and they're like, "Oh fuck!" And it just leaves off there. Like, what do I do now? I hope I didn't make a horrible mistake.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So I guess you figure out where your structure is, right? Whether you're playing hard math or if you're playing with watercolors. The
I'm
structure
more
of
of a
how you're doing
watercolor
it, right?
person.
Yeah, I mean, I like, yeah, I'm a Beck, this, I'm a Beck me guy, a BX old
Mhm.
school D&D guy, where it's like the location is the adventure, and whatever conversations you have in it's totally your fault. But since none of it's scripted, it can just go. It's just as far off the rails as your personal team feels is appropriate. It can go in any direction. It's just the personalities that are at the table at the time that determines how gonzo it's gonna get.
So in this game specifically, they know that this dude not only kills all these people, but he also becomes a ghost and gets bound to his own domain. And his domain is full of undead, almost all undead. The living are mostly slaves to the undead. And so and one of the players is from the undead land. They're a vampire. So I'm kind of wondering how okay, I know I have my opinion on how it would impact that vampire character. Like I don't think there would be anything that would change to him because I want people to feel encouraged to make choices. But of course that could change. I want your opinion on that. But aside from that, this whole region of undead, like it's a country, a whole country of undead.
Sure. Okay.
So if those undead no longer existed, that would destabilize and alter everything in the region. Like they export food to all of these other nations because they don't need to eat it. And
Oh
that's
my
how they make
God,
their money.
genius. Holy shit. That's a great idea. I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
geopolitics is intense. I love. We were talking about this earlier. Taking nonsensical ideas and these convoluted circumstances that arise because we're players, and the DM's job is to take the mental gymnastics of making it make sense, and
Hmm.
that's world building. Like, yeah, you have this undead nation, and they export all that food. What does that? What does that mean for everyone else? Are they going to be attacked by Russia because Russia is like otherwise the world's largest wheat exporter? That's
Right.
a war waiting to happen, right? How's that going to play out? But
Yeah.
yeah, oh God. So if sorry, are you saying that if they do they want? I mean, is the result of them getting rid of this guy that this undead nation never happens? But
Yeah.
but the
They
player's
they
going to
don't
be
produce all the food.
the
That's
player will still be
basically
the
what happens.
player. So that means that his
Right.
bloodline is originating outside of that nation. Otherwise, he'd be impacted by it. So that means at some point they were migrants that came into that community and got soul bound to it somehow. So that unravels the binding that he has to that. So maybe he doesn't have like, I don't know if you have blood bonds or like a pact or something like that, but he could still be him, but now he's dissolved this complication that he has to deal with,
Ritual gayish.
or it gets replaced with a whole new complication that he didn't anticipate that forces him to reevaluate like his ideals, for instance, or what his flaws are and how he would express those in game. Like that may be a change that he feels because he knows his blood has changed. He can feel it.
Yeah,
That,
that is interesting. And no, we don't have blood bonds in vampire terms, but we do rituals and have gayishes too, just like 5e.
oh, okay, right on, right on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there could be some meat there for him to play with if he's interested in that. Otherwise, it doesn't change at all because
Yeah.
fates. But geopolitically, if you shell that out, and how long ago did this happen? 5,000 years ago?
Well, no, no, no. 5,000 years ago is when the kid was born.
Oh
Then he
God.
became a wizard when he was in his 40s, and then eventually he became a ghost. I suppose that he extended his life for thousands of years first. Yes, that's right. The Wizard War lasted over 1,000 years. So yeah,
So who
uh,
wins the Wizard War if he isn't there?
it's a dude. That's a good question. It's a dude that is essentially a summoner and transmuter. He had a lot to do with like Far Realm basically and Lovecraftian entities, and he
Cool.
created factories to pump out these huge monsters that were a conglomeration of a bunch of different people and monsters in order to defeat Geb, the undead dude.
Oh, I could imagine him laying waste to most natural land within
Right.
X amount of miles, which
Like,
means
is the same thing going to happen anyway?
yeah, I mean, he would have to then start manufacturing food because he destroys the ecosystem. So it's like phyrexia. It becomes like fucking phyrexia and
Yeah.
everything's synthetic. So now he has these construct plant things growing Soylent Green for people, and that's the best nut you can get, which means that external food and spices become just huge popular. But if he has to provide food to all these people, that means that people can't leave. Otherwise, they really would have, which means that he's corralled them in or they're trapped for some reason. So that could be a result of the war without this ghost being there. Maybe one of the fallouts is like now they're like a point of light. There's like 2,000 miles of magical radiation fallout in a gamma world setting before you can get back to normal campaign worlds.
Yeah.
And like if they can teleport out of the area, that's awesome. But meanwhile, there's like 2 million people that are stuck eating Soylent Green with these like robot overlords that are telling them what to do. Are
It
you
could even
comfortable with that?
it could even be something like the Harkonnens in Dune, and that they have the heart plugs, but maybe
Yes,
it's
yes,
remote
yes.
controlled, or the like the border leaving the border activates it, so they start bleeding out as soon as they try to leave. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be like slavery; it can still be just magical fuckery of some sort.
Maybe this guy needs psychic dread to be able to power his factories. So the worse he makes you feel, the more powerful it becomes. So
Oh, I like that.
the
Oh,
heart
that
blood is
paints a
just a
whole new
constant reminder that
world.
you're worthless and that nothing you do is going to matter. That you were just bred to die,
I
and then
feel
they feed
like
you back.
I feel like this is going to be so different that I just almost spontaneously broke into song. A whole new world.
Yeah, so whoever it is that ends up winning the war because this guy is missing, that's going to drastically impact everything around it. And that's just and that I think really helps lean into like what are you guys looking at? Like this is a this is a what how far in progression are they? Or like on a scale of 1 to 20, where are they at?
Well, frankly, they could have succeeded already. They just got sidetracked and did other shit.
Well, I mean, what level are they? This is Pathfinder, right?
Oh, they're 11th. They started at 6th, I think. So, like, as far as the adventure goes, I had other shit happen here because I wanted it to. But the thing that I've been most interested in the whole time, the through line is what are they going to do about Geb? And they still haven't decided that, except that one of them has basically a minion that went off to tutor him so he doesn't get into horrible shit while they're doing other things.
Right on.
Yeah, that was smart.
Yeah. My thought there is that like if this is a campaign capper, then the next campaign you run is in the modified world. Like this is the fallout. This is how society works, and you have to operate inside of it now. Or if you wanted to continue the campaign on to 20th level, then the rest of the campaign is how do we fix it?
Something that people brought up is that somebody on my server, they live in a different country and they're familiar with Nazi Germany from a different perspective. And so they said, well, yeah, if somebody took, like, what are they going to do to ensure that that doesn't happen again? The same thing that Geb did. Take his place. Okay, if they take his place, or if they remove him, somebody else is going to take their place. But because of the political influences at the time, somebody else is still going to be there. The Holocaust might not happen, but they still might be a shit leader. So how
Right.
are you going to assure that things are still okay after that?
Yeah. Yeah. That again, that just goes into how does your team like to play and how granular do you want to make consequences? So like cascading up through time to have to hit those bullet points, or just having an immediate snap. And then if you do a snap, then the team discovers what's changed all at
Right.
once. And it's a high it's almost like a plane hopping. You're potentially moving into a completely new existence, or nothing changes at all. And it's like if nothing changes, it's going to feel unsatisfying.
Oh yeah.
There has to be some sort of emotional payout for the amount of effort that they're putting into it, man. But yeah, it's either going to snap to it, and then if nothing changes, it's unsatisfying. So that means there has to be changes, but there can be changes at different levels. It can be like an obvious societal change where as soon as you look, it's like everything's made out of mushrooms now. Something weird happened. Or it's incredibly subtle, like everything's the same, but instead of it being a 7-Eleven, it's now a 7-13. You know? And it's like, like it's oh, this is another Rick and Morty joke. You won't get it. It's they whenever they fuck up so badly that they have to leave a reality because it's doomed, they have this machine that helps isolate variants
and
Uh-huh.
they're running out of exact matches. So now they're stumbling into stuff that's like a little bit off. And the most recent world that they went into, the way they pronounce it is Parmesan cheese. And they're like, really? It's like, yeah, that's the only difference. It's like, fuck, I hate that. Because they ran out of perfect matches.
That's funny.
So it's degrading over time, but that's the same sort of thing. It's like if everything is exactly the same, it's unsatisfying. If it's ironic and quirky, like one little annoying thing changes, but they want to have the emotional payoff of we went through all this effort to make this happen. We have to have had some sort of positive impact. So is it a societal change? Is it like how they feel like this worked? These things are still bad. However, that one thing that you wanted to change, like maybe their big thing was like they hate undead farming food. It's like, well, undead are no longer farming food. That's a raw victory. Everything else is just collateral damage. So what's your team's tolerance for collateral damage? So if you're stepping through it in that scaling method of wrapping up to new bullet points, like every time something goes wrong, it's your fault that this
Right.
went wrong. This could have been better, but you fucked up. So what are you going to do about it now? And then it becomes just an endless cascade of consequences and them attempting to basically roll above a 15 every time. And every time they can't roll above a 15, something horrible goes wrong. What's your rate? It's just like a horrible leveled skill check, like a skill challenge where you have like succeed 5 times before you fail 4 times or whatever. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you're just basically throwing dice, good luck. But then you just like really make each die roll an entire adventure, and the results of what they try to do is what that die roll is. And well, that's the result. So now we're going to roll up to this change that happened, good or bad. And now the world has shifted a little bit in the direction that you want, but it's not there yet. You now have this new challenge. So you can keep moving through a campaign from level 1 to 20 by impacting at the beginning. And as you continue cascading back forward through time, hitting all these milestones, you're gaining a level off of each milestone, or maybe it takes like 2 or 3 levels per milestone. So you like really feel like a big accomplishment. It just depends on how quickly you want to scale, how long you want each adventure. Like if you want to be one shots, you could technically run through this campaign in 20 adventures. Every time they hit a milestone, they gain a level. Now next week, it'll be a new 2-hour adventure. So you can
So
just crack through them.
So it still feels like advancement of some sort.
Yeah, yeah, and so you finish the campaign in 6 months, and then you move on to the next thing if that's how quickly you want to move through it, or you just make like a 5-level campaign thing. It's like, yeah, but we're done. And if you like this new world that we built together as a result of you fucking up, well, we'll make our next campaign there at whatever level.
Great.
So yeah,
Maybe chlorophyll's blue here or something, and they just like that it's weird.
yeah, yeah.
Are you a fan of Star Trek Voyager?
I've seen a few episodes of it. I'm probably least familiar with Voyager, even less so than
Okay.
Deep Six.
Well,
So
then you probably didn't happen upon the episode about the Krenim and the time machine, time ship.
I doubt
Okay.
it.
So essentially, this species was almost annihilated by another species in the same solar system, and they were not advanced in ways of warfare, but they were scientifically minded. So they built the time ship, and the time ship is removed from time, and then they go around essentially blowing up enemy homeworlds and space stations and ships and other stars just to change history a little bit so that they could have their civilization back.
Nice. Mhm.
So I was wondering so the way that this group got back to ancient Egypt is there was a time cave that is actually part of a set adventure, which is weird.
Cool.
But when they come back, I could either like blow up the time cave or let them use the time cave, or I just realized while we were talking that they could have some sort of time ship. So it still feels like upgrading, and then they can like also fly when they travel back in time because they're 11th level. It's fine anyway.
Yeah, yeah. You just want to get to where they're supposed to be anyway. They're either going to spin a teleport to get there or not. So totally. And people love ships.
Yeah.
I have yet to run a game where I've introduced a ship where they didn't immediately just make it their home. It's like, yeah, we're going to do everything we can to gust this thing up and let's go attack shit with it. It's like, okay, so I put it there.
I was really surprised by that in a 3.5 game. The last one that I ran, they were on this like sort of demonic undead quest line, and they were trying to keep this vampire lich from bringing back an ancient shadow red dragon.
Oh,
And then I'm like, oh, and also you see that there is shipwreckage from a spelljamming vessel, and it's surrounded by constructs. Okay, well, we're gonna do that. but that's not the. It doesn't matter.
That's right. Yeah. All threats are now a ship. Immediately. That ship is there for us to destroy stuff. Let's make an army out of those constructs. Let's go. Immediately. Yeah. It wouldn't even been a question.
Right. It doesn't matter. World at stake. Ship.
Yeah, we know how to make this ship work. That whole dragon thing is it's going to become inconsequential. Here comes thunder. So exactly what they're thinking. This is going to help collapse time frames. So good for us.
I was surprised that we actually came to this, that we could come together and talk about such like an esoteric to TTRPGs topic and bring it back into TTRPGs, because we spent like an hour and a half just chatting and we came to this. Like, we could still talk philosophy and directions and how people work and that kind of shit.
Yeah, I would love for us to like look at like what are weird fringe ideas, or like what are difficult plot types, storylines, or like genres of games, like what are difficult to do, and just kind of mash on it to see if there's some cool ideas that we can come up with that can be dropped into games.
Yeah, I agree.
Structuring
One
and
just
stuff.
came to mind, but I don't want to announce it right now, so we can talk about it later.
Absolutely. Fantastic time.
I don't just appreciate you being here. I like talking to you. You're fun.
It's the gaming is just cool. It's the imagination, man. It's I get AI, I get where it's going, but it's the lightning going off in your head that makes the effort fun. It's an activity. It's not a task. It's play. We're playing. Adults play in the mind. Children play on the street. I guess whatever. But it's
Not for long.
it's just the ability to be able to make connections and jump to conclusions and think those things through that makes role-playing games just so much. It's just so much. It's youth. I love it. So
I agree. It's invigorating too. Thank you everybody for joining us. Appreciate you being here.
Mitigators.
Go visit Fil Kearney's channel, if for nothing else, to look at how he handles 3D combat on spelljamming, within a spelljamming context. But also, he makes pretty shit. Just go take a peek.
Right on. Thank you. All right. Catch you guys later.
Yeah. See ya.